Assalamu alaikum. This is Critical Talk with Dr. Aminah Al-deen. After a little bit of a hiatus, Critical Talk is a production of Sound Vision. And I would just like to say also, for all of you listening, please go to Muslim Network TV, which is also a production of Sound Vision. Sound Vision keeps a team together to try to get the news, local, national, and global, to all of us, and especially that news that should concern us as a widely diverse Muslim community daily. I have the honor today, and I mean it is an honor, to have a conversation with Dr. Khalid Abou El Fadl. I'm going to read um, his bio because it is important that we know our scholars. Dr. Khalid Abou El Fadl is one of the world's leading authorities on Islamic law and Islam in general, and a prominent scholar in the field of human rights. He was the Omar and Esmeralda Afi Distinguished Professor in Islamic Law at UCLA School of Law, where he was teaching international human rights, Islamic jurisprudence, national security law, law and terrorism, Islam and human rights, political asylum, and political crimes and legal systems. If that isn't enough, I'm telling you, they should have paid him double what he is definitely worth. He was a chair of Islamic Studies at the Interdepartmental Program at UCLA. He has a BA in Political Science from Yale University, a JD from the University of Pennsylvania Law School, and an MA and PhD in Islamic Law from Princeton. He is one of our heroes and definitely an American Islamic scholar. Now he's the founder and the director of the Usuli Institute, which we'll talk about in the program. Dr. Abou El Fadl, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you. And it's always a pleasure seeing you.
Well, I've divided up the program a little bit. I've read all of your books, but I want the audience to be able to know the titles and what you have to say in these texts, which are so important. The first text I read was The Search for Beauty in Islam. I mean, the title just glowed. And then it said a conference of the books. And I looked in there and said, how did this brother do all of this? I mean, the conversation is so awesome. So would you like to tell us a little bit about how you put that particular book together before we go on to the rest of them?
The Search for Beauty in Islam and the Conference of the Books, actually, if there is a book that I would wish to be buried with of all my books, I think this would be it. It actually literally grew out of my relationship with my library. I've accumulated a library that's now about 100,000 volumes.
Oh my goodness.
And
that's off to Grace.
Grace had to put up with it, I have to admit. I mean, it breaks your back financially and otherwise. But it includes some manuscripts. It includes every source you can imagine in Islamic theology and ethics and philosophy and law, especially law. And my habit is to work late into the night. I'm a night owl, and I literally would imagine these scholars coming to life and speaking to me. Suyuti or Subki or Al-Ghazali or Ibn Rushd or Ibn Sina, and as you know, the Islamic tradition is extremely diverse and full of full of truly exceptional intellectual, um, insightful figures. So I would imagine Abu Hayyan al-Tawhidi in my space, meeting in Ghazali and having a debate with him about. And so I started just translating these night fantasies into paper, and that's how the Conference of the Books was born. I take very seriously the well known Islamic tradition that Allah is beautiful and loves beauty, and Allah jamilun yuhibbu jamal, and that um, the foundation of Sharia is husn and not qubh, is beauty and not ugliness. But what does that mean? And what does that mean in our times? And uh, in many ways, that book is really a search for that meaning, a journey to that meaning.
Well, I would encourage everybody listening and watching this program. It has case studies. It does marriage, divorce, parental rights, the position of women, the veil, sexual abuse. Why I was so you don't know. I was so taken by this text that I bought maybe 4 or 5 copies because I was giving them to people trying to get them to understand what it means to be so conversant with the text that you could actually have the text talk to you. And I probably don't have this in order, but the great theft. Talk about that book because I won't say, well, Conference of the Books is my favorite book, so I won't do a comparison. But The Great Theft is very important also. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
I mean, The Great Theft really was born out of the aftermath of 9/11. I could see the formation and evolution of the Islamophobic movement, and I could see the writing on the horizons that the Islamophobia fundamentally, the essence of it was going to say that the Qaeda and the everything surrounding the events of Al-Qaeda was not an aberration, it's not a marginality, it is actually the core and essence of what Islam is. And I really wanted to write an accessible, straightforward book that the average Muslim and non-Muslim can read and understand the difference between what everyday Muslims, the Muslims that live with Islam naturally, uneventfully, every day, and the type of thinking that that subordinates entire segments like women, or the subordinates or imagines it cancels the rights and worth of the other. And of course, I mean, it's a drop in the bucket because the Great Theft, as I expected, unfortunately, Islamophobia exploded on the scene. And, for what it's worth, the Great Theft, particularly, there is a historical transformation in the theologies of Islam that took place in this colonial moment with the destruction of the Ottoman Empire and the mythology of puritanical Islam in Arabia that they were returning Islam to its pure self, and the its hostility to rationalism, and its hostility to Sufism, and its hostility to concepts of rights, and even the intellectual tradition of people like Muhammad Abdu and Rashid Rida and so on. And I quite, you could see the effect of that movement that arose out of the heart of Najd, the desert in Najd that overtook the holy sites and was empowered by petrodollars. You could see the impact of it everywhere. And it was my attempt to in an accessible, straightforward way, to explain the significant historical moments to readers. I wish I could do more about Islamophobia.
We're going to do this some more because I'm gonna be on you. In these challenges for myself, sitting here in the United States, for many of us, discerning who's who on a wide, kind of global Muslim plane has been difficult.
Yeah.
Many of us, especially those of us who are African American, look at it and say, well, yes, there should be elements of Islam fighting against colonialism. But in that fight, it should not be waged against other Muslims, the women, the children, the destruction of homes. And, we're looking at it saying, what the hell is going on here? And then because Islam has been used in so many ways here in the United States since the 17th century, really, because, this place committed genocide for the Europeans to get here, and they brought their notions of a global Islam with them. And so it's interwoven in settings, and like you said, it's never been quite sleeping, but always waiting to have an opportunity to burst forth,
Mm-hmm.
And certain elements in one of the other of our communities has made that opportunity accessible. You then, and lots of play people were doing it. I'm on the East Coast where lots of Muslim organizations are. The next thing one of our interlocutors put to us was, well, Islam is not compatible with democracy, as if democracy was some bar that everybody had to meet. And you wrote Islam and the Challenge of Democracy. So do you want to talk to us just a little bit about that?
We can have an intense, endless debate about what is democracy and what really democracy represents. I mean, because democracy, if it is simply the rule of the majority, well, the rule of the majority has justified colonialism, has justified racism, has justified sexism. If democracy is that there are fundamental rights that the majority cannot overrule or overcome, and in fact that stand as, in principle at least, regardless of the abuses in application, you might. So the point that I want to say is this: is that I have seen and lived and experienced the effects of authoritarianism and despotism on Muslims everywhere. In fact, part of the problem is that, in my view, is that historically, where Islam has sprouted, it managed to produce indigenous, authentic expressions of Islamicity wherever it went. But except in the modern age, because of how entrenched despotism is in Islamic cultures, it, it, the Muslim mind has become resistant to indigenous, authentic expressions of Islamicity. So, for instance, the Islam that comes to the West carries all the burdens and earmarkings of the despotic mindset of Arab Islam, the despotic mindset of Indo-Pak Islam, and when it experiences indigenous, let's say, for instance, African Islam in the United States, it doesn't know what to do with it. And
but why does it? Why can't it let me be me and we share? Why does it have to do something with me?
Well, but that's precisely the point. That's where I see the problem of despotism. I mean, the impulse that drove me to write The Challenge of Democracy is my lifelong now. It has become a lifelong war against institutions of despotism and authoritarianism. That we all work with the sort of the Islam that we follow, and I'm talking about immigrants. Their attitude is, well, Dar al-Fatwa in Saudi and Sheikh bin Baz or Sheikh Uthaymeen tells me what Islam is, or Azhar tells me what Islam is, or Jamaat al-Qarawin tells me what Islam is, or Sheikh such and such in Mauritania tells me what Islam is. And then we come to the United States and we truly are unable to adapt, to coexist, to navigate the indigenous expressions that come from a very different cultural outlook than that of immigrant Islam.
I think that you put that so well. We're going to take a break, a couple of minutes, get some water because I'm going to light you up. This is so good. And I'm going to take a drink. So with that, this is Dr. Aminah Al-deen having a conversation with Dr. Khalid Abou El Fadl, and we will be right back.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Dr. Aminah Al-deen, and this is Critical Talk. And I'm having a wonderful and instructive conversation with Dr. Khalid Abou El Fadl on a wide range of things. Right now, we're talking about his books because I think that they should be in everyone's library. There's a lot to discuss, absorb what he's saying, and then come back. He is a teacher, and we need to be really good students. The next text that I want to get to is Reasoning with God. And there's a lot of stuff, especially in the African American community, about the primacy of the Sharia over ethics. Akla has taken a back seat. We have a real battle going on with ethics, and the Sharia locks us, the way it's been presented, not what it actually is, has locked us into ritual after ritual after ritual to the point where we can't think.
Exactly.
Talk to me.
Exactly. Yeah, reasoning with God. I mean, and let me just make very clear something about the title, because people who misunderstand things. It's are you saying you're arguing with God? No, I'm not arguing with God. What I'm saying is how we use reason while believing in God, how we navigate our subordination before God, our recognition of God's supremacy, and at the same time live while employing that amazing gift, that magnanimous creation, the most unbelievable and profound, miraculous creation of God, the intellect. And if subordination to me, if my subordination to God and recognizing God's supremacy means that I somehow forgo the intellect, that is such an oxymoron, such a contradiction. Why would God create and gift me with this unbelievable instrument, the intellect, only to tell me don't use it? Islam cannot be that way. And as to that point, because it's really critical, reasoning with God is my attempt to say that the essence, the basis, the core of Sharia is the primacy of ethical taklif, ethical obligations that are founded in our belief in God. And that, in fact, law can be an instrumentality for authoritarianism, for despotism, for stupidity, for idiocy, for dumbness, for indolence, for just being simply apathetic and uncaring. Law can be all these things, but it is how do we anchor ourselves in ethics so that law doesn't become this. And I understand it's a thick, long book, and that has not done it any favors. People don't like to read, but it. Do you know that the most engagements I got with reasoning with God was Catholic and Jewish theologians who read the book and influenced it. Even I recently had a Dutch scholar, a Christian theologian, who wrote me about how much reasoning with God influenced their own thought. And it saddens me because we Muslims just don't take our tradition seriously. We just don't take the real tough questions that we must tackle in order to be convincing to our children and convincing to our most gifted intellects, but
Well,
we
you
don't take
know,
them seriously.
we're going to get, after we do the most recent book, to the Usuli Institute, because it does provide opportunities for engagement of thought. And that is such a rarity. And well, I'll say more later, but there aren't those opportunities. You know, I read the conference of the book when it first came out. Who did I have to talk to? Well, I made my husband read the conference of the book. And he said, "Oh, this is awesome." We're both saying this is awesome. But who do we then
Yeah.
have to sit down and discuss it with? Is there a seminar on the conference of the book? Is there even a seminar on knowing your subject well enough to let some of its authors be in a conversation? But nevertheless, I named this show the way I named it because I just finished From the Prophet's Pulpit. And I have to admit, there were times in there I was really angry with you, but not for what you said, but for what you didn't say. And that the book could have had another 100 pages. But I was laughing. I was pensive. All of the range of emotions that could come, even though, of course, you that trauma that you lived through with Sisi, well, it wasn't necessarily with Sisi, but with Egypt, period, which is a den of thieves in a different way. Um, we have a den of thieves here, and I really, really wanted to engage you. The From the Prophet's Pulpit is a series of essays. And then I was mad because you wouldn't let me put it down, and I really had something else to do because I wanted to go to the next one and call you on the phone and say, "What is it?" You know, it is that kind of book, almost like a practical engagement of the Conference of the Books. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So tell us about the Prophet's Pulpit and the commentaries on the state of Islam. You know, because you do a lot in this book.
Yeah, first I have to say that this book really would not have been would not have existed if it hadn't been for a brilliant young scholar called Joseph Linhoff, who uh, uh, really was a driving force in convincing me to continue on for these essays to be born. And he's done a tremendous job helping edit the essays and just a brilliant young man. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this is music to my ear that you completely saw that this is like a practical engagement of the Conference of the Books.
Yeah.
And I will be the first to admit that part of the issue is that I am speaking from the perspective of my own consciousness. But my consciousness, like all individual consciousness, is highly inadequate because it is thoroughly the product of its own subjective experiences, which means that there is, while I am aching in crying out for justice, I'm aching in crying out for ihsan, for equity, for fairness, I fully recognize that I will never know the emotions, the feelings, the reality of a young, for instance, African American or Black person who grows up constantly fearing the presence of police in their neighborhood, or constantly knowing that they are viewed not just as a suspect for being a Muslim, but then a suspect just for being Black by entire society. But yet what what the prophet's pulpit, the idea of the prophet's pulpit, is that I see my prophet as a man of truth. When I imagine my prophet standing to speak to people, he didn't brown nose despots. He didn't, it didn't make nice with oppressive people and unjust people and ugly people. I would every time I imagine my prophet speaking, I imagine my prophet speaking the truth. And this was an effort to say, please, for God's sake, when you get up on that pulpit at Jum'ah or anytime we effectively reproduce the role of the prophet, والسلام, please understand the moral responsibility. And be honest in admitting your failures, your limitations, your weaknesses, and constantly look to what God demands from us as is a matter of ihsan, as a matter of being beautifully Muslim.
Yeah.
I don't understand what a Muslim is if a Muslim doesn't represent beauty. If a Muslim represents oppression and despotism and darkness, I don't understand the Quranic references that would say that it came to take you out of zulumat al-nur, out of darkness to light. To me, there is something innate, something primordial, something fitri. It is per our fitra when Allah tells us that you should be people who have light flow between your hands, as the Quran says. That's what a mu'min is, a person who's luminous.
As you say in the book, and the book begins out with a slam bam, talking about going to Jumu'ah. Let me tell you, as an African American Muslim, first I go to Jumu'ah and I got to do battle with the immigrant men at the darn door who are going to tell me where to go. And, Black women don't do that well. But then after I get in there, I have this man where the khutbah is in either Urdu or Arabic. So I haven't gotten anything much. I do have a PhD in Islamic studies, and I can understand the Arabic. I miss out on the Urdu, but it leaves me empty, and I leave having done a duty. And then in the book, in the very first essay, you say, what if you went to Jumu'ah and it really spoke to you? And that's why I'm pushing this book. And your lovely wife, Grace, made sure I got one in a hurry. And we gobbled it up. We have it on the iPads. We have the physical text because it is a gobble. I mean, it is a feast for the soul. And whoever the young man was that encouraged you, Mabruk, because we need it. And at this time especially, because there's chaos everywhere. And with that, I'm going to take another short break because I want to get to the Usuli Institute and all the wonderful things that are going on there before I let you go this time. This is Dr. Aminah Al-deen in conversation with Dr. Khalid Abou El Fadl on Critical Talk, and we will be right back.
A free online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Aminah Al-deen in conversation with Dr. Khalid Abou El Fadl on Critical Talk, a production of Sound Vision. He has just written, put together really a series of essays that he's written about the Prophet's pulpit. But I now, in our little bit of time left, I want to take you to the Usuli Institute. And they have a mission statement and a value statement online. And one of the things that the Institute and Dr. Khalid push us toward is our responsibility to knowledge. And it says, and I quote, as a research and education based think tank institute, we explore all avenues of human thought, seeking wisdom whenever we may find it and wherever we may find it. As directed by the Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we must be not only relevant and smart, but brave and aspirational in our work. And definitely our little tour of some of the things that he has written shows that dedication. There should be no limit or boundary to our curiosity. And I'm introducing now with Dr. Khalid the Usuli Institute, which is unique. It is a one of its kind in this nation, where I'm not sure yet how to get into some of these conversations, but I'll figure it out because they're too dynamic for me to lead. So if you could take us through all of the pieces, and there are lots, trust me, and videos for those who need to see. I mean, looking at the library makes you want to cry. But anyway, Dr. Khalid, take us through the Usuli Institute.
Okay, so at the heart and core of the Usuli Institute is the library that's 100,000 volumes. But also at the heart and core of the Usuli Institute is Grace, who's the director of the Usuli Institute. And I would put it simply, you know as well as I do that when we encounter Jewish theology or Christian theology, the intellectual levels at which the discourses on Christian theology and Jewish theology go on. But we come to Islamic theology and we are way backwards.
That's putting them on.
And the dream of the Usuli Institute is to create a space where we set standards for discourses that are not ghettoized. We don't play intellectual. We don't play the game of being intellectual in a ghetto that is substandard, but actually engage the world of thought. The other thing that I have to say is that the Usuli Institute, there is an ethic of pursuit of beauty wherever it is, and that is why, for instance, Grace pioneered the effort to produce a CD of music by a very gifted convert, Dutch convert, Witsky Merson. And so wherever we find a venue of beauty, we pursue it. And of course, as you know, the main challenge is that we refuse to take any money from any government. And we refuse any funding that is foreign. And so how much we can do, how far can we get, depends on how people support us. And as you know, Muslims, unfortunately, have lost their ethic of creating creating awqaf, which used to be a heart and core. Yeah. But we've accomplished a full tafsir. Alhamdulillah, we completed over 2 years an ethical, I would call it an ethical interpretation of the Quran, the morality and ethics of the Quran, from the very first revelation to the very last revelation. It speaks for itself. Inshallah, Grace is trying to raise funds so we can do the same with the seerah of the Prophet. I don't believe that the Prophet's legacy was about ghazawat or how he ate or how he divided his time with his women. The Prophet represented an ethical legacy. And
well, you wouldn't know it because it's not talked about or
at
written
all
about anywhere.
And this is the we're hoping that inshallah it's called I forgot what Grace titled it exactly, but it's something like that decolonizing the seerah in response and overcoming of Islamophobia. And ethical. Why did this man inspire a nation to go from being illiterate, ignorant, backward Arabs to founders of a civilization? What was about this man? What was the passion? What was about this man that made people compose songs about him and poetry and fall in love with him for centuries all over the world? And my lifelong study of the seerah, I found that in the micro moments of his existence, in his dhikr, in his humanity, in the way he handled individuals. So inshallah that we would be able to accomplish this. And my dream is to continue discovering brilliant young scholars like Joseph Lenhoff, the editor of the Prophet's Pulpit, to give them a space to grow and develop and to have an impact. That's the dream.
Well, I think that one of the things is I've got to figure out a way for you to seriously engage with those of us who are trying to make our footprint known in Islam in this country, because for us it is an American Islam and everybody else just kind of came on over, but they're trying to put a foot on our necks that's not working well, and it causes so much rancor that beauty and that light become, you got to fight for it. And that's why this book is so important, but the engagement is even more important for us. And I'm going to give you, I want you to stay on after, but I'm going to give you the last minute. Tell us what you want us to know.
I want Muslims to understand that if our reality is constructed by what we are committed to and what we invest in. If we invest in substandard scholars, in scholars that only impress substandard people in the Islamic community, but that do not impress the rest, anyone else in the world, that's the reality we construct. And then our children will be easy prey to Islamophobia. The rate of attrition from Islam among young people is extremely high, and we don't confront that reality. So many kids grow up that I encounter in law school that say, my parents are Muslim. And the only way we are going to confront that in any real sense is to invest in serious institutions of learning and inquiry, and to overcome, like for instance, overcome our hang-ups that were created from despotism. So, for instance, do you know I once I was invited by a very well-known Islamic institution to give a lecture, and the lecture was supposed to be a published essay. I was asked about critical race studies. And because of the response I gave about critical race studies and the importance of race studies to any serious Muslim intellectual, not only was my essay not published, but I was never re-invited. I'm not kidding you, and it's a very well-known institution. And I think this type of stuff is the death of Islam. Mm-hmm. When we exclude the rest of the world, I mean, any serious intellectual endeavor knows the role of race, knows the role of class, knows the role of gender, right. Knows that. And when we try to say, oh no, Islam is somehow above all of that, we kill Islam. Yeah.
Well, I'm unfortunately going to have to end here, but I'm going to ask people, first of all, to look at the 3 ways to support knowledge. It is important that we do this. And Imam and Dr. Khalid have invited us consistently on the webpage to join. I'm going to take issue with the use of the term convert, only because I didn't just get out of jail. But I want to talk about people transitioning to Islam, because it's a transition. Right. That for some is more difficult than others, but when we let Christian terminology box us in, what it does to the person transitioning is they take their shahada and they're supposed to be a Muslim tomorrow. And I would love to hear you stress that. Also for the women, Dr. Khalid did a wonderful tafsir on Surah Al-Hujurat, which I think, I know it's talking about Qimar, etc. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is the fact that he teaches you how to read. And in learning bit by bit how to read, you can get that light. And with that, Dr. Khalid, the first of many engagements with you.
Inshallah.
To thank you, because this has been I've been chomping at the bit to do this. And I am so happy I don't know what to do with myself. And I want to thank Grace and the team there for all the work that they put in, because I know it's got to be endless. And I'll invite all of you for dinner over here in Maryland.
Inshallah.
But thank you again. Critical Talk thanks you. Sound Visions thanks you. And we will engage again.
Inshallah. It would be absolutely my pleasure and honor. And this was a real treat. You cannot imagine. Unfortunately, as you probably can guess, I experienced a lot of marginalization, a lot of slander, a lot of attacks. And it is it's a breath of fresh air when I talk to you. It's liberating. It's re-energizing. Thank you so much.
No, when people, and that's a different story, but I think it also is a story that people need to know, because they don't know about acting, but they don't know about the pathology that exists in our community. It's like you got a snake inside and one outside,
Exactly.
You can't decide which one is bigger. But again, I want to thank all of you. Thank you for your time. And inshallah, we will talk again soon. This is Dr. Aminah Al-deen for Critical Talk, a production of the wonderful Sound Vision, inviting you now to turn on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.